Hello everyone, welcome back to the Mini Hack Solved series. In this episode, we'll solve a LWC hack. We'll see how to use GraphQL API with Lightning Web Components. We'll see how to use the GraphQL wire adapters to retrieve records from the Salesforce org. We'll also see how to use Datatable based components to show those records. But before that, let me tell you that Mini Hacks is one of the most popular areas both at Dreamforce and Trailblazer DX, where people come in, pick up a hack, and solve the hack. The hack contains the requirements on what to do but not how to do it. It also specifies the features that are to be used while solving the hack. So let's go and check today's hack. In this hack, we'll be creating a data table using GraphQL API. Let's look at the description. GraphQL API is a new paradigm of sending and receiving data between client and server. Universal Containers has just learned that a new GraphQL wire adapter is now available in beta. It wanted you to validate the wire adapter to migrate the data tables to use it. You are assigned a task to implement a data table to show a table of contacts strictly by using GraphQL and not Apex. So, you cannot use Apex to retrieve data. Before we dive into the requirements, let's understand what is GraphQL. You can check out these videos on Salesforce Developers YouTube channel, which covers all about GraphQL in detail. In this video, we'll do a quick refresh of GraphQL concepts and then we'll implement the hack. GraphQL is a new paradigm for sending and receiving data. It provides a query language for APIs and a runtime to run those queries. The apps that call GraphQL APIs are often much more performant than those that use traditional REST APIs. The GraphQL API requests only the necessary data, so you no longer under or overfetch the data. Let's understand this with an example. Imagine you are implementing a mobile app and you want to display the basic user information, say just name and phone number. Assume you are using REST API. You send a GET request and the REST service returns all the user information available through that endpoint. This information might include email, age, title, address, and much more. But you don't need all of the data. So that is the wasted data. Now let's see how GraphQL works. You post a query and it returns exactly what you need. Now let's look at a different scenario. I want to show a user profile in my app. With REST API, the app would need to call different REST endpoints for each resource or data type, making multiple round trips to the server to render the profile page. With GraphQL, you only need to make one call to a single endpoint. Thus, you are reducing round trips to the server through retrieval of all necessary data in just a single invocation. Also, you can retrieve multiple types of records and metadata in one request. The overall data size is smaller and your app is faster. As we just saw in the illustration, GraphQL offers developers a single endpoint to call for all data needed in one request. Not just that, it is schema driven. And you can introspect the data, which I will show you in a short while. It also has fantastic developer tooling, which we will explore while solving the hack. So, how can you get started? You can check the GraphQL API guide on the developer.salesforce.com website. You can follow the quick start in the documentation. You can use various client tools like GraphQL, Altair, and Postman to write and test your GraphQL queries. You can check these two links to work with Altair GraphQL Client and Postman collection. In this video, we'll use the Altair GraphQL Client. You can download and install Altair through this link with a simple click. Once you install your Altair client, it looks like this. We can write the queries here. And as I said before, we'll use HTTP post to post the queries. Now, let's look at the quick start again and see how this Altair client can be set up. The first step is to get an API access token. GraphQL API uses OAuth 2.0 similar to other Salesforce REST APIs. You can create a connected app and set up OAuth authorization and then get an API access token. Or the simplest way is to get it using Salesforce CLI if you are using VS Code. Let's see how. I am in VS Code. I have created an SFDX project and connected it to my Salesforce org. I can use the CLI command sforg display to display the org information. We'll use the access token, API version, and instance URL from this information. If we go back to the quick start, the second step contains instructions to create and send a request from the Altair client. Open the GraphQL client and set the post call endpoint. Let's copy the endpoint and paste the URL into the GraphQL client. Let's update the part of this URL with the instance URL in the org info. And also update the API version. The next step is to set the header with the authorization field. Let's copy authorization. Go to the GraphQL client, click set header and replace the header key with authorization. Let's also copy the format and paste it in the header value. Let's now copy the access token from the org info and update the authorization header. Let's save it. Let's now copy paste this example query and test it. We can run it by clicking the send request button at the top right or the send query button just above this query. You can see that it returns a list of account records. Let's now examine the syntax and structure. You can explore the syntax by introspecting the schema. Let's click the docs link. And you can see that our schema supports two types of operations, the query and the mutation. Query provides an entry point for read operations, while mutation provides an entry point for create, update, and delete operations. Mutation is available in API version 59 and above. So make sure if you want to use mutation, you'll have to use the API version 59 and later. In this case, we are using a query. You can give an optional name like an account here. It will be helpful while you debug your queries. Everything within braces is called a selection set and it can contain fields. User Interface API, in short called UI API, is currently the only API family that participates in the schema and you can access it through the UI API field of type UI API. You can do various operations using UI API like query records, aggregate queries, get object metadata, and get related list metadata. In this case, we are querying account records. GraphQL is based on the principle of graphs, which has edges and nodes. So we are using the same concept here, edges and nodes. For now, you can think of edges as all the links to all the records, and the node is each record. In the documentation, if you click the account, you can see that it can take arguments like order by, where, etc. just like SOQL queries. You can supply the arguments within parentheses for the fields. For example, let's retrieve the first 5 records. You can also see it has an edges field of type account edge. If you further click that, you can see that it has a node of type account. If you click the node, you can see all the fields in the account record and you can selectively query the fields that you need. In this case, we are querying for ID and name. If you click the name, you can see that you can get value, display value, and label. Now that we understand what is GraphQL and its syntax and structure, we can solve the hack easily. Let's look at the hack requirements. You can use Salesforce Developer Edition, Trailhead Playground, or ScratchOrg to complete this hack. Let's start by creating a Lightning Web component named Datatable with GraphQL. Let's go back to VS Code. Launch the command palette and run sfdx create Lightning Web component. Let's give the name Datatable with GraphQL as in requirements and select the default folder. The LWC component is created for us. Okay, let's go back to the requirements. The component should get the data using GraphQL API. The component should display a list of contacts in the Lightning Datatable base component with the name, phone, and title fields. There is also a hint that we can refer to an example of how to display data using base components. Let's click that link. Here we have a data table example that displays account records, but we need to display the list of contact records in the data table. So what we'll do is we'll copy and paste this code to our component, understand this code, and then change it to display contact records. Let's copy paste the HTML code and save it. Similarly, we'll also copy paste and save the JavaScript code. Let's also change the meta file to display the component on the home page and app page. Now let's understand the code. Let's start by examining the HTML code. If the accounts property is not empty, which means if we have account records, only then we are displaying the records in the Lightning data table. The Lightning data table component has a key field to identify the records, the data, and the columns field to be displayed. If the accounts property is empty, we display the error. You can notice that we are using the LWC else if condition. Now let's look at the JavaScript file. We'll be using the new GraphQL API wire adapter. Hence, we are importing the wire service. The Lightning/UI GraphQL API module has two functions, GQL and GraphQL, for executing GraphQL queries. We'll see how to use those functions shortly. Then, we define the columns to be displayed in the Lightning data table base component. We are using GraphQL API wire service to get the account records. GraphQL is the identifier of the GraphQL wire adapter. This can be wired to a method that takes data and errors as the parameters. What is this GQL? GQL is a tagged template literal and indicates the presence and location of the GraphQL queries in your component. That means all your GraphQL queries must be wrapped within the GQL tag template literal. We can also test this query with our Altair GraphQL Client. Let's copy this query. Let's click Add New and paste the query here. Let's copy paste the authorization header from the previous request and save it. You can send the request. There you can see the records in the response. Now let's go back and change the code to get contact records with name, phone, and title. Let's open the org by clicking the Open Org button and see the field name for the name, phone, and title fields. Let's go to Object Manager, select Contact Object, and open fields and relationships. The field name for name is name, the field name for phone is phone, and the field name for title is title. So let's go and change the code. Let's keep the name and phone and remove website and annual revenue because those are specific to account. Let's add title. Let's change the accounts property to the contacts property. Now let's fine tune the query. Let's give the operation name as get contacts. Instead of account object, now we'll query contact object. We'll keep the name and phone and remove the website and annual revenue. We'll add title. Let's save our work so far and test the query once in GraphQL Client. Our query seems to be working fine. So let's go back and examine the void method and make the necessary changes. Let's change accounts to contacts. Here you can see that we are navigating through the response using dotted notation. If you go back and examine the response in the GraphQL client, you can see that the data has UI API, which has a query, which further has contacts, and then that contacts has edges. So we can say data.uiAPI.query.contact.edges. In the code, let's change account to contact, and rest of the things can remain same because account and contact has similar hierarchy. For each edge, we are getting node properties. So let's keep the ID, name, and phone as it is. Let's remove the website and annual revenue and add the title. Let's save it. Let's now update the HTML file. Change accounts to contacts and save the file. We are almost done. Let's now deploy the code. We can use Salesforce CLI and type the command sf project deploy start to deploy the code. You can see that it has successfully deployed. Let's open the org. Open any home page, say service homepage. Edit page to open the Lighting app builder. Search for the data table with GraphQL component and add it to the page. Add it as a org default and save it. Save the page and click the back button. There you can see the lighting data table that is displaying the contact records. We have solved the hack. To see more examples of GraphQL Wire Adapter, go to developer.salesforce.com, click Build, Code Samples and SDKs, and check LWC recipes repository. We have created few examples based on GraphQL Wire Adapter. Once you deploy the LWC recipes app, you can check the examples under GraphQL tab. You can find recipes for using variables, pagination, etc. In this video, you saw how to use GraphQL API with Lightning Web Components. We saw how to display the data in a Lightning data table. There can be more than one way to solve this hack. If you have a better solution, please let us know in the comment section below. Also, please share your thoughts on content in the comment section. If you like this video, please click the like button and subscribe to get notifications for any new videos on the Salesforce Developers channel. Thank you.